What's up, ServiceNow community? My name is Matt, and I'm going to do a quick video, hopefully quick, that demonstrates the new UI Builder, the Now Experience UI Builder application, builder application that released with Quebec, or at least the newest version that released with Quebec that is far more capable than the one that was available in previous versions. And I thought, since I've seen a lot of videos out there doing various different levels of demonstration of UI Builder, but I thought I'd maybe do a simple one where, and I think it's sort of the 80-20 rule, where you need an application that displays a list on one page, and you click an item in that list, and then it links you to a form where the user can edit the details of that record they just clicked on. So it's a 2-page application, very simple. And I think it's 80-20. I think tons and tons of applications require a list that links the user to a form. And it's sort of like the building block. It's the bread and butter of workflow applications on ServiceNow. So I'm going to start here on the ServiceNow Service Management UI, and we're going to navigate to UI Builder. This instance I have here is configured with the latest code from Quebec. So I'm going to pull it in, and I'm going to enter into UI Builder. So I have all my experiences here, and this is just a simple list of all the UX, the Now experiences that are on this platform, on my instance. And we're going to go ahead and create a new one for our simple master detail application. The master page or the home page has a list on it. When you click an item in that list, it takes you to the detail page, which has a form in it. List form, master detail, whatever you want to call it. So let's create the experience on the platform. So let's go ahead and new up an application. I'm going to call it master detail. I'm going to use the blank canvas app shell UI, the UXR blank app shell. Basically, I'm not creating a workspace. I'm not creating a portal. I'm just creating a blank canvas because, again, this demonstration is about just vanilla master detail, list, form. So I'm going to use the blank app shell UI option. And I'm just going to, my core URL, my base URL to navigate to my application is going to be /master/detail. And then, of course, I'll have other parts of the URL that navigate me to one of those 2 pages that I just described. But the core of the URL is just going to be master/detail. And then finally, the most important thing in this configuration is getting a UX app configuration spun up. So I just need to create one on the fly here. So I'll hit new, and I'll just call it master detail. And my landing path is home, so that's the page that will contain the list. It's just the home page. It'll have a list on it. Very simple. Click submit, click OK, click submit. And now I have my experience completely configured. Flip back over to the UI Builder tab, refresh, and I should see my thing pop up. My new Now Experience Framework application. Give it a second while it thinks about it, and it thinks really long and hard about this application. There it is, master detail. Awesome. Created nice and quickly for us all. So enter in a UI Builder now by clicking on that link. And now I'm in Now Experience UI Builder. And it says, hey, you don't have a page. You got to create one. Cool. Let's create a page. Let's call our page home because it's the home page. Very simple. Now, I'm not going to use a template because these templates are very powerful and you can do a lot of different things, but they're very use case specific. A lot of them pertain to building a workspace. And I'm not really building a workspace. I'm building a very simple, generic master detail list form application. So I don't need all the power of these templates, but these are very, very great options for if you're building out of the box, using out of the box capabilities like the CSM workspace and things like that. So not going to do that. I'm going to leave it alone. I'm going to hit create. And it's going to create my page, and then it's going to say, cool, do you want to create anything else? Do you want additional variants? Like, do you want instances of your page that might render differently for different audiences? No, I'm just creating a very, very, very basic application, so I don't need variants of my page, my home page that I just created. Do I need parameters on the URL? No, I don't need parameters on the URL because the user is just going to go to /home and land on my page. So no parameters required. Although we will use parameters in the second page, which we will see in a second. Anyway, I'm going to hit done, and I've got a page. Wow, look at that. Just a blank, good old blank page. Got nothing in it. So again, let's talk about what we're building. We're building a list page that will link to a detail or a form page or a record page. So we got to start building the list page, aka home page. So what do we need on a home page that needs a list? Well, we need a list component. But I'm going to do you one better. And I'm going to create one that's got a menu of lists, which has various different conditions that will render different views of that list before the user decides to click one of the records on the list and then link over to the detail page. So that means I need two components on this page. I need a list menu, and then I need the actual list. So that means I need a layout because I'm going to create two components that are going to be side by side. So the cool thing about that is that my body, if I go to the body here, already has a bunch of these pre-built layouts that I can apply. Isn't that cool? So I'm going to use this one over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but it's basically like this sort of sidebar nav versus the main body. I like that. You got a sidebar nav and then you got a main body. So in the sidebar nav, I'm going to hit add component. You got this big list of components here. So the one I care about is called list menu. And we're going to see what that does in a second. It's a cool little navigator that will allow you to render different views of a list. So list menu, I'm going to throw that in there. And then on this side, I'm going to throw in the actual list itself. So you see I got two components side by side. Boom, took me seconds, and I've got basically what looks like an actual functional page. I could have done some other decoration on this page, like put a header and put all kinds of fun stuff. I mean, you can do all that stuff. That's for future videos. This is simply a master detail application. I just want a list menu that the user can click various different views of this list over here. And then when they click these different views, the list renders that view. Very simple homepage. So we need to configure all this. So this is where it gets really fun. We go to list menu. Now list menu has these configurations, and the default configuration is basically things like incidents and problems and requests and catalog tasks. It's basically stuff that derives from the task table. And that's cool, and I love all that stuff, and it's bread and butter for things like the workspace, but that's not what we're going to do. We're going to make a location navigator. So we're going to look for locations around the world, and you're going to click on a location, and then you're going to see that location render in a form. It has nothing to do with the task table, which I think is awesome. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create our own configuration, because again, this configuration is very specific to task table derivatives. So we're going to do something with CMN location. So fun. So you can see these little escape hatch links that take us out to platform to make configurations for the list menu. That's a really convenient link. I'm going to use one of these links, the configuration link. I'm going to make a new list menu configuration called locations. I think locations is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm just going to go ahead and create that. And then when I go into this list menu configuration, you can see I need some categories, right? Because I don't really have any categories. So I need a category. And this category is just a location. This is going to be a category of list menu items that will be filed under this category. So everything I create as a list menu item will be under the category location. And it's going to be the number one. I'm only going to make one category in the list menu. You can have tons of groupings of various different things in the list menu. But again, this is a super simple demo. So I'll have one category in my list menu. It's called location. Submit that. Cool. So then I'm going to flip over to UX list. This is the other things I need to create to make conditional items show up in that list menu. So I'm going to create a new list for the list menu, and I'm going to call this like all locations. It's everything, right? The category I just created is location, right? So that was my category. The table again is CMN location. That's the table we're working with today, folks. And in this case, I don't need a condition because it's all locations. So this condition is null. We don't need anything in there. Now, what columns do we want to display on our list? Well, I think city's cool. And I think, I don't know, state. and zip. I don't know, just keep it simple, right? I mean, we could get crazy and add stuff like longitude, latitude, and time zone. Time zone's actually kind of cool. Maybe we'll throw in time zone. I don't know. We'll put time zone at the top. So there's our first list menu item. Ooh, we need an order. Order 0. That's the first item in the list menu under this category. So I'm going to submit it. And let's create another one. So this one is, instead of all locations, let's create locations only in the United States. So US locations. Cool. Did I spell that right? I think I may have. My category is location, and my table is CMN location. If I can spell, clearly I can't type tonight. Cool. Now I'm gonna need a condition, right? Because I want US only. So country is USA, the good old USA, whatever that means. So cool. So city, did we do time zone? Yeah, time zone, city, state, and zip code. Boom. Order 100. So this will be the next item in our list menu. And then finally, we're going to create one more list in our list menu, and that's going to be rest of world locations. Again, filed under the category of location, and CMN location is our table. And again, you probably guessed it already, a country that is not the USA. Pretty cool, right? Time zone, city, state, and zip code. We just put them all in there, right? Oh, this one's going to render at order 200, which means that it's the third and last item in the list. Cool. So we've done this, got everything categorized. Let's flip back over to UIB and let's go ahead, save our page. So we got the list menu in the list. And instead of using the default configuration, well, look at this. We created a new configuration called locations, if you remember. So if I save that, boom, look at these. Our locations have showed up. Our list menu items have shown up. That's fantastic. So how do we get this component to control the list? Well, that's kind of an interesting question, because how does this component communicate with this component? It's like when the user clicks one of these items, I want the list to render that filtered list of items. Well, this is called cross-component communication, and this is a powerful capability of UI Builder that was introduced in Quebec. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the list. So you can see the list is like sitting here trying to render its default, it's a complete default experience, all the change request stuff that we don't care about. Well, it's, why? It's because its default configuration is against the task table, and it's got a default title, and it's got all this default stuff that we're going to change. So the table we want to get is actually going to be driven by what the user is clicking on this component on the left. It's not going to be statically set as task anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this little data icon. And the data icon drops me out a bunch of different options. Notice how one of them is elements.listMenu.selectedListID or elements.listMenu.table. Cool. This means I can receive my table configuration from a different element on my page. In this case, the list menu component. Awesome. So I'm going to choose table. So that immediately drives this list to display locations because it's being driven by this component. How awesome is that? And then my title is going to be locations I wanna check. Whatever. This is like, cool locations. Cool locations. Awesome. So that's the title of our table. Cool locations. We don't need anything else here, but the filter, we need to filter based on what so not only is this going to drive the table that we display in this list, but it's going to drive the filter on the records we list. Because remember, we want to show either all locations or only US locations or only rest of world locations. Those are different filters or conditions. So we go to the filter section, and you can see it's already got the @ symbol. So it's already expecting dynamic input. It's like, hey, the table's dynamic, So you need to tell me what the filter is. So I'm going to go down, and also remember we saw @elements.table. Well, check it out. There's an @elements.listMenu.conditions. So I can also get the conditions from my list menu. So that means that as the user is clicking on these items, not only is it going to specify the table that gets rendered over here, but it's going to specify the filter on the records to display. So that's a pretty awesome capability. Now, if I really want to get crazy, I can specify columns that I want to see. And the list menu will also drive some columns that come off of that table. So in this case, if you remember, the columns I specified was time zone, city, state, and zip code. That all comes from the configuration of this list menu component that we did on the platform, if you remember. Pretty cool, right? So it shows you how all of that data is driving the experience on this page. Anyway, we're done with this, so I'm going to go ahead and click Save. So the next step is going to be when a user clicks on one of these items. By the way, I'm not happy that time zone's empty on all these, but whatever. But if the user clicks on one of these records, we want to open this record in a detail view. Remember, master details. This is the master. Now we open a second page, which is going to be the form that's going to display that record in full view, which is pretty awesome. So in order to do that, first we need to create a second page. Now that gets me super excited because I love creating pages in UI Builder because it's such an easy process. You just hit create page and you say, my page is going to be called location. Now, again, I'm not going to use a page template, but in this case, I do want to pass a sysid and a table name to this page so that it can render the correct form. So I do need required parameters in this case. So now that I've created the page, I've called it location, I need to create required parameters. So I need 2 required parameters. I need the table and I need the sysid. So I'm going to go ahead and create that brand new page. It's going to be blank. Do I need variants and all this stuff? No, but it does reflect back to me that I have a table and a sysid as 2 required parameters that are going to be on the URL of this page. So here we are, blank page. You'll notice on the preview of the URL up here, UI Builder is like, hey, this is how to get to your page. However, you need a table and a sysid in order to really have this page fully rendered. So the cool thing about UIB is that I can put test values in this thing so that during design time, I can test this page to see what it would look like in the real world with real data. So I'm going to put the sysid and the table name on this fake URL. So that sort of hydrates it, or that supplies the data I need for that, which is fantastic. But I've got nothing on my page right now, right? So let's talk once again about layout. I like this for this page, since I'm going to have a form on this page, I'm going to put a header that displays the name of the record that I'm looking at, and then of course the form itself, which displays all the fields that are editable for that record. So I'm going to use this this layout over here, which has like a header space and a body space. So the header space, I'm going to add the record header component, which is a great component to just display what record you're looking at. And then of course in the body, I'm going to put the good old-fashioned form component. Oh, screwed that up. Typed a little too fast, and I put the form component in there. Now, of course, nothing's configured, right? This is just, these components are kind of like, hey, I don't have any data. What's up? So the first step to configuring a record page is to create a data resource. Look at down here. I click this data icon. So I'm going to create, this is kind of like fetch me data from the database, from the back end to get me data to make my form work. So the first thing we need is the all-important glide form data resource. And that's under the application called ServiceNow Now Record Form Connected. Glide form. This is the all-powerful, one of the most important data resources that you could ever have is to power the record page, which we're building right now. That's the glide form data resource. So I hit that, and then boom, I've got a glide form data resource in my page. But now I got to configure it. So if you remember, my page is getting a table and a sysid from the URL. So how do I take those values off the URL and pipe them into my data my data resource? Well, this table is going to dynamically get its data from context.props.table. That means get me my table name from the URL. SysID. Get me my SysID. How about that? Get me my SysID from the URL, context.props.sysid. Awesome. So then all of a sudden on the right here, you can see a preview of all this data that's coming in now. Like that's basically like fetching from the back end of my instance to get all the data I need to power my record page, my form page, which is fantastic. So I really have just supplying context.props.table, context.props.sysid, which again is just basically like dynamically get me the table name and dynamically get me the sysid and hydrate this data resource so that I can have data that can fuel these components on the page, stage page, whatever you want to call it. So here we go. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with the header. So we want to display stuff in the header. So I've got this great data resource down here, and I want to start using it to fuel the header. So the table should be pretty obvious. I'm just going to reuse context.props.table. I used it to down here to get it off the URL for that. I'm also going to use it off the URL for the header itself. Same thing goes for the sysid. I'm going to use this little dynamic link. Going to go to context.props.sysid. So now I've got table and sysid specified. Now the header needs a primary value, which is going to be the big bold thing that displays the record name up here. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Now for this, I need to dive into that data broker. So at data.glideform1, which again is referencing this data broker down here that I just added. Now if I hit a period, it's going to suggest a bunch of things. One of the things is the now record common header. This is a part of the data resources part of this data resource that will fuel the header component. Now I'm going to go down to primary value. So remember, primary value is the name of this thing. So primary value is the key in the data resource that will hydrate the header record. Look at this. I'm getting test data from this test sysid 101 Broadway East. So it's an actual location from the CMN location table. Awesome. Subheading. Let's see if there's a subheading that we can fuel from, again, the data.glideform data resource. I hit period to start dot walking into that data. And I want to say now record common header dot, and we're going to look for subheading value. And it doesn't look like there is a subheading for this specific header configuration. That's totally fine. We'll just leave it as is. We don't need a subheading. The rest of this stuff is, I don't think, really that needed. So I'm going to go ahead and save our page, and I've got a header configured. So now let's do the form, the most important part of this page, the actual form that's going to display our record. So I'm going to highlight the form component by just clicking on it. Now I got a bunch of work to do here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say, once again, I can use that URL param for table. I can use context.props.table. I don't know why this is giving me a little bit of a hassle, but if I hit the @ symbol, I should get the dynamic capability. At context. Okay, it's not showing up. If I hit this, context props table. Sorry about that. We're going to do this again. Context props sysid. So I've just basically said, hey form, you're going to get your table from the URL. Hey form, you're going to get your sysid from the URL. Awesome. Now this is where it gets interesting. Back into the data broker. Data.glideform1, hit the dot. Now we're going to use the now record form blob part of the data broker response, or data resource response. The data resource is called now record form blob off of the glide form data resource. So I'm going to hit that, and I'm going to get the view. Now this is where it gets a little, I sort of know this because I just been messing with this for so long. But under details props, if I hit dot there, I can get the view from details props.view. So it's just going to give us that data. And I can also do the same thing for forced view name. Now, I need sections, right? So again, I need to dive into that same data resource, data glideform1 dot form blob dot sections. There's the sections from, again, our data is driving this entire experience. Finally, I need data glideform1. Let me do that again. Glideform1 dot now record form blob, because we're dealing with the form component, dot, and let's see if we can find fields. There it is, fields. Boom, look at this. We've got a form rendered. Fantastic. It looks like a location record, doesn't it? Because we're getting test data from this URL. Table CMN location, sysid is this. So we're getting hydrated data in our page. That is absolutely amazing. I'm going to click save. Now, I've got two pages. I've got a master page, which is also called home page. Master is just the list. And I've got a details page, which is the record page, which again is the form. So let's link the two together. When the user clicks on items in the list, they're going to land on the form for that record. This is the fun part. This is when you do event configuration on the list. So I'm going to highlight the list. I'm going to go over to events, and I'm going to hit, so when a row is clicked on the list, this is the row, the all important row clicked event. I'm going to hit add new event handler. So I'm telling the application, I'm telling the component, or really telling the application what to do when a user clicks an item in this list. Well, I want to navigate them somewhere. I want to link to destination. So I hit select destination. And this is where it gets fun, because it's basically like, where do you want to link them? Do you want to link them to an internal app route, or do you want to link them out to, I don't know, Disney.com? Well, clearly I don't want to go to Disney.com. I want to go to the app route for the location page. That's the detail page that we just finished configuring with the form in it. So what I want to do though is I want to send the table in sysid to that page, right? Because that page requires a table and a sysid. If you remember, those are the required fields that I had specified on that page. Remember when I was supplying test values, there was a table name and a sysid? Well, in the world of event and navigation, I also need to send what table and what sysid the user just clicked on in the list. So that comes from the payload object from this event. So payload.table and payload. I'm going to use the dynamic link again, payload.sysid. So I press OK, and I've essentially wired up an event handler, and I've done an event mapping. So when the user clicks one of these rows, it's going to execute a link to destination handler, and it's going to supply the table and the sysid from what the user clicked on to that page, so that our full master detail experience will be complete. So I'm going to go ahead and save this page, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hope that all of this configuration actually works on the real page. So I'm going to open my home page by clicking the open button. It's going to open my page, the actual page I've built. Now notice it's at /now/master/detail/home. So this is my home page. Now the first thing we're going to test is, can I change the location? So this is US only. This is rest of world. So you can see Winnipeg, Hyderabad, Calgary, Tokyo, Brisbane, all that good stuff, all locations. So these are all the different filters under the location category. If you remember all of that list menu config we did at the beginning of the video, that manifests as a location category, and then actual list menu items, which are simply just category or conditions on the location table, and it fuels the list component. Now the final test, can I click on one of these items and will it link us to our detail page? Drum roll, please. Boom, there it is. There's our form. So we have successfully wired up a simple application. Let's go, here's Indianapolis. We can go to Burbank, California. There it is. So all of our locations are linking. If I want to go rest of world, let's go somewhere like Melbourne, Australia. There we are, Melbourne, Australia. And of course I can edit this form. And if I had, UI actions and all kinds of stuff, I could do all that stuff, but that was way out of scope of this video. I just wanted to show the most basic form of master detail, which is really the basic application on the ServiceNow platform. I think once you understand these fundamentals, you can start to get more sophisticated with some of the configurations, some of the page building that you can do with UI Builder. I hope everyone watching this got something out of it. Leave a comment below. I don't really have subscribers really on YouTube, but if you want to subscribe, cool. Maybe I'll make a few more videos. If you want me to make more videos, I'd be happy to do that for anyone that is interested. Anyway, I hope you all have an awesome rest of your day, evening, afternoon, whatever your time zone is, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.